Okay, so this tactic is going to be on another heavy support choice. It's the Exorcist, really the only tank, so to speak, for the Sisters of Battle Army. And it's an interesting one. It's one that people often really hate to go up against, and uh, it's quite a versatile tank. It's got a lot of uses. It's certainly a solid choice for anyone who's going to pick a heavy support. Just to go over this so people are aware, there are actually two options for this tank. There's the classic pipe organ of death, which is this rhino frame with the pipe organ built onto it, and it's got the Sisters of Battle emblems on its side and everything, and this comes from GW. And then there's the Forge World Exorcist, which is a rhino with the Exorcist missiles built onto it. It's actually cheaper. It's one of the few things where going to Forge World saves you money. And personally, I think it actually looks a little cheaper than the pipe organs. It's a far less impressive model. It's just a rhino with these tiny little missile launchers on it. Actually, I have a third option. I have a Whirlwind. So talking about the Stormbolter or the Hunter Killer missile, why is that really important? Well, now that weapon destruction is random in 6th edition, so that when you get weapon destroyed, you roll for it. There's a 100% chance that the Exorcist missile launcher is going to be destroyed if you have no second weapon, but if you have a Stormbolter or a Hunter Killer sitting on this tank, then there's a 50% chance that that's the weapon destroyed. Your opponent doesn't get to pick, like they did in 5th edition. Okay, run through the basic stats on this tank. It's being run by a standard battle sister from what we can tell. You don't really know, but she's ballistic skill 4, so when she's shooting these missiles, they're actually pretty accurate, far more accurate than anything in the Imperial Guard. It has a front armor 13, but its side armor is 11, it's a rhino, and its rear armor is a 10. So the tank, this is the tank you really want to face towards your opponent during the game. There's no facing on the missile launchers, so as it says in the FAQ, and I'll read this just because there's been a debate on this, but when firing an Exorcist launcher, what point is the weapon is considered the barrel for measuring purposes? The answer is any of the pipes on the organ. So obviously this doesn't apply to the Forge World model, but this means any of these pipes are the barrel of the weapon, which means this thing can fire, pretty much a 360, which is obvious on the Forge World model. This thing can turn 360. So that's important. That's really useful if you're taking this tank. So for tactics, one of the things to remember, this is armor 13 on the front, but the rest of it's pretty soft. These tanks can fire above. Now, if you can see your opponent given minimal exposure on your vehicle, and you can fire this above the ruin that I placed here. These tanks can take advantage of a lot of cover and still get their weapon to fire above it. It's kind of hard to imagine how this weapon works because all these pipes look like they're facing straight up. So these missiles, Exorcist missiles, must come sort of shooting up and then fly down at their opponent, but they do not have barrage. So let's talk about the weapon. The Exorcist launcher is in many ways unique. It is it shoots D6 missiles every round that you fire it. So you can often end up firing 6 missiles, but just as often you're going to fire 1. The missiles are strength 8, AP 1. This is awesome. The AP 1, really boosts their damage if they penetrate an opponent's vehicle, and strength 8 means they're going to wound a lot of things. They are going to suffer from the one great weakness of the Sisters of Battle army, and that is Sisters of Battle don't have any weapon that is strength 9 or 10. So The Exorcist missile is as strong as you're going to get, and that means if you go up against vehicles that have armor value 14, the best you can do is glance with an Exorcist. So it is the weakness the sisters have. Let's talk about tactics. These things have a 48-inch range. Their armor value 13 on the front. So what you often want to do is keep them, back. You can pre-measure in the game now, so you can set them up so that you can keep them back out of range of your opponents, maybe in cover, and then drive them out and shoot. These are the vehicles you're going to get first blood with. You're probably going to be able to take out most light armor, maybe even a monstrous creature, or a walker or something with one of these. Great thing to know with the Exorcist, with the new rules, you could move combat speed. You could move 6 inches with this vehicle and shoot one weapon without snap firing. Well, you're probably only going to shoot one weapon. That's the Exorcist missile launcher. So, this vehicle can easily move 6 inches, turn and fire in one round. A lot of other vehicles, if they move, they're going to be snap firing a lot of their weapons. Not the problem for the Exorcist because it only has that Exorcist missile launcher. So this is a vehicle you can move around. It's of course going to be a scoring unit in the Big Guns Never Tire, and so in 1/6 of your games it's scoring. It's a good backfield support unit. I wouldn't bring it up near the front of any battlefield because remember, if it gets assaulted, it's rear armor 10, so pretty much everything can take it out. It also suffers from blasts and barrages because it's side armor 11, so this is a vehicle you really want to keep out of blast range because blasts can easily pen the Exorcist. Now it does have a 6-up invulnerable save, so you've got that, but certainly nothing that you would rely on. Whirlwind-esque model using parts from Guard and Dark Angels on a Rhino frame that I think actually looks much better than this thing from Forge World, but those are your two options. This is talking about the Exorcist, what it does, how it stands up as a heavy support. It comes as its own, just an Exorcist in the heavy support at 135 points. That's pretty darn cheap for a tank. It is a tank, which means it has the tank rules. It can tank shock, for example. It's got one piece of war gear, a Exorcist launcher, which in this case is the pipe organ on the back, and the other option, that's an Exorcist launcher. The Exorcist also comes base with smoke launchers. You might use those, in the games if you're looking at night fighting, particularly at the beginning. Comes with Shield of Faith, just like everything else in the Sisters Army. It's going to get a 6+ invulnerable save. Can't really complain about this. There aren't many tanks that come with their own invulnerable saves. You can add a searchlight for 1 point, and I would often suggest this is a great way to use 1 point because half of all the games now are going to start in night fighting, and searchlights are great. It gets dozer blades. I don't know if it's worth it, but it's only 5 points. It gets a Stormbolter option if you want, or you can put a Hunter Killer missile on it. So there really isn't a way to model it there, but on the Forge World model, you can take your Hunter Killer missile here, or Stormbolter and put it there. And let me explain that in a second why that's really useful. Alright, and then you can take extra armor for 15 points, and I don't know if I would do that. It's really not worth it in 6th edition. So, really, this is the tank of the Sisters Army, and in summary, it's a good tank. It's got a solid front armor. Armor 13's almost as good as you're going to get in the game. It shoots D6 Strength 8 missiles every round, and that means when you fire this, at your opponent, it's pretty likely that it's going to be able to kill because those are Strength 8 AP1 missiles. So this is the vehicle that you're going to be able to take out enemy vehicles with, monstrous creatures, walkers, small units. It's really the main fire support for the Sisters of Battle, and it's a good vehicle, but it has limitations. It's got that weak side armor, terrible back armor, It only has a 48-inch range, so on hammer and anvil deployment, you don't want to put it all the way at the back end of the field, or it simply won't be able to hit your opponents. It comes with a searchlight at one point, so if you're going to have these in your army, at least take one with a searchlight so that you can spotlight an opponent if you get night fighting on round 1. Last thing to consider, how many Exorcists should you take? Because these vehicles are going to be high priority targets for pretty much any enemy army, you want to probably take 2 or 3 of them. There is an option with 6th edition where you have the double force org, and I've played against it. The option of someone running 6 Exorcists. You take some canonesses or low point HQs and minimal number of battle sisters, and at 2,000 points, you can run 6 Exorcists. It's a solid tank option. It's got some weaknesses. It certainly does really well in Big Guns Never Tire. It doesn't. It's because of the randomness in the firing. It's not great at taking out infantry, so. It can suffer in some against some army lists, but against others, low number of models. Say you put 6 Exorcists up against a Grey Knight's army or something, obliterating a bunch of Terminators, for example, with a D6 Strength 8 AP1, missiles is pretty solid. So this is it's a good tank. It's a funny option to see people run all 6 of them. I played against it. I lost, so I know it works. One other thing to think about with these, because they shoot D6 missiles, if you roll high enough, then you're actually quite likely to be able to hit a flyer with these. If you shot 5 or 6, there's a good chance you'll roll a 6 at least once when shooting at a flyer, and Strength 8 AP1 means most flyers go down when hit by Exorcist missiles. So, in summary, this is probably the best tank choice. It is almost a guaranteed mandatory choice for most Sisters of Battle armies. Certainly, if you get above a few, 100 points here at 500 points, maybe I wouldn't take it. But 1,000 points, 1,500 points, 1,500, I would certainly say you have to take Exorcists. But even at 1,000, they're a pretty solid option. And one other thing with the Exorcist that I guess should be mentioned, GW, when Games Workshop's Exorcist, this is metal, so this is a very top-heavy model. It likes to fall over and break. It also, in many cases, is extremely difficult to put together because, I'll flip this girl around, you can't really see it, but there's 3 portions to the pipe organ, and they don't always fit together really well. So you may have to use green stuff or filler or JB weld or something like that to really hold it together, or put glue in there. It doesn't always fit well. But when it comes together, it's actually a pretty cool looking model, and that's the ups and downs to it. The Forge World model is just very easy to put together. It's just a Rhino with the Exorcist launchers.